Attention parents and coaches. Do you wish you had a safe social media platform for your youth athletes? Fortunately for you, there's a revolutionary new app that helps with just that. Introducing Small Player, Big Play. Small Player, Big Play app provides young athletes, parents, and coaches a user-friendly sports social media platform. The app allows users to connect with friends, make new friends, create groups, text, chat, and post pictures and videos of you and your teammates participating in your favorite sport or activity. To begin, users can simply download and sign up for the app using an email account. Younger users have the ability to sign up using their smartphone and a parent's email address. From there, users can begin to interact and engage with other users of the app. Small Player Big Play app also gives users the ability to live stream full games and events. You can live stream your event so that friends, family, or anyone in the world can see you in action. Users can also share posts from the app to their other social media accounts like Facebook and Twitter. What are you waiting for? Get in the game and share your love of sports with the world. Download the Small Player Big Play app today.
Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show.
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which has been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011.
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
With a focus on football.
Kansas City 31, San Francisco 20. Mahomes takes the snap. He is just going to throw it long for Demarcus Robinson. It is going to use up all the time. The game is over, and the Chiefs' kingdom has firmly planted its flag on top of football's highest summit. The Kansas City Chiefs are champions of Super Bowl 54.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and sitting across from me is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Plenty of football. It's crazy, absolutely crazy that there's only 2 full weeks of NFL football left.
Yeah, we're going to be diving into the Week 15 action. There's a game going on right now, and then there's a game tomorrow night, but then that's it.
Yeah, and it hit home because in one of the late games today, they were talking about, depending on these last 2 games tonight, there could be some meaningless games next week. Games that literally don't mean anything because of who teams are playing and like who they play week. And they, to be fair, they were talking about games that don't mean any, teams that might not have a meaningful game in week 16, but have one in 17 because of who the opponents are.
Right. So it'll be interesting. I know the league over the last few years had tried to make as many divisional games happen at the end of the year. And I know they're able to do that some weeks, but not others.
What they were talking about is depending on what happens with the Steelers, the Chiefs game next week may have 0 impact on whether or not they have
a chance to win the NFC East?
The
You're talking Steelers-wise, not Redskins-wise.
Sorry, yeah. The Chiefs.
The Chiefs.
Right.
Okay.
The Chiefs locking up the 1 seed next week may not mean anything, and week 17 might mean everything, depending on the week out. Right, which is crazy. But
yeah. So we have another guest with us, a guest who we introduced everyone to just a few weeks ago, but we're happy to have him back. Joining us again to talk pro football is Paul Roberts. Paul, thanks for joining us again.
Good to be back, guys. Wore my glasses this time. Hopefully I look smarter. Can't promise that I'll sound any smarter, but they say that you look smarter if you wear glasses. And these are actually prescription. I don't know if you guys realize, apparently it's a trend now. People actually buy glasses and don't even need them. who knows what's going on in this world nowadays.
I'll have to jump on that train.
Yeah, I mean,
smarter.
yeah, 2/3 of us right now have
the
this
odd man
are on
out.
this trend.
I'm the odd man out here. So
you being able to see.
I have the correct vision. I could still join the Air Force. I mean, they reject me for other reasons, but eyesight wouldn't be one of them. So, Paul, yeah, thanks so much for coming back. We enjoyed talking to you. I can't believe it was 3 or 4 weeks ago already that we were on this show talking about pro football, NFL. And at that time, we ran through all the games and talked about, kind of who were the contenders, who were the pretenders. And it'll be interesting to do that again and see if any of that has really changed. I don't know how much really has. I think a few people have jumped up and down, but I don't know. To me, and Justin and I have talked about this a lot, and I think we should probably just start with that game that finished just a little bit ago, featuring two of the better teams in the NFL this season, the Chiefs and the Saints. Justin and I have been talking for a while about Kansas City, and I said recently, and this was a couple weeks ago, right after we had you on the show, I think I'm at the point where if you told me Kansas City or the field, I'd go with Kansas City, and I'm not sure anything has happened over the last few weeks to change my mind. Well, what are you seeing in the Chiefs right now? What do you think about their opponent today, the New Orleans Saints?
I agree with you on Kansas City. They're the best team. I mean, I look at that game that they played against your Dolphins, and it was turnovers left and right. And then you look up, and they're still up 3 scores. I mean, it's almost like a college team that is playing a lesser opponent. And you know that even when they're down, you just have this feeling that they're going to come back, that they can almost score at any time. I mean, they have a future Hall of Fame quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who's already won a Super Bowl. They have a Hall of Fame head coach in Andy Reid. Regardless of what some Eagles fans may think of the guy, he is a genius when it comes to calling plays. He may have issues with time management, may completely ignore the run game at times, but he knows how to scheme guys wide open. And then you have the speed of a guy like Hill. You have Kelsey, who's a Hall of Fame tight end. Their defense doesn't have to be great, and it isn't. It's not a great defense, but when you're going to score over 30 virtually every single game, it's tough to stop. And they're able to beat the Saints. Thought Drew Brees was really rusty in this game. Now, if he can go, he plays. I think we saw last week Taysom Hill has a lot of good attributes. He's not a quarterback, and not in this league. Just not accurate enough. I mean, you have to be able to make throws in tight windows from the pocket. I don't trust Hill to do that. Doesn't mean he's not valuable to the team. They like to use him a lot. Sean Payton puts him out there all the time. But when you see Drew Brees is 7 of 22 at one point, that was shocking to me. But I wasn't surprised that Kansas City won. And I think that has been the one constant, is that they are the best team. The Steelers look like they're going in the wrong direction right now. The Packers have the best team in the NFC. But if they played Kansas City in the Super Bowl, is anybody taking Green Bay? I don't think they are.
No, I agree with you. I'm with you 100%. And that kind of segues into I want to say it's a tangential topic because it's just something I was thinking about beforehand. I didn't even get to talk to Justin about this. I feel like this isn't a banner year for the NFL in terms of team play. There's a lot of great individual accomplishments going on. You have Derrick Henry chasing that 2,000-yard rushing mark, and obviously some of the quarterbacks like Mahomes and Rodgers they're putting up great numbers. Tyreek Hill's touchdown pace is incredible. DK Metcalf, what he's been doing in Seattle. But team-wise, no one is separating other than the Chiefs, and it's just a whole bunch of almost like mediocrity. I look at a lot of these teams, and I'm just not impressed. If you put them up in teams of the past, 5-10 years, I just don't see a lot of interesting teams. And maybe that's what everyone wants because, honestly, if you put the Chiefs aside, I bet there's probably 10 other teams that you could possibly say, if the Chiefs weren't around, I could see them maybe winning it. Because I'm not impressed all the time by the Saints. The Packers, like you just mentioned, in the AFC, the Bills are coming on recently, but they had struggles at time earlier, and I think they can be a little chaotic with Josh Allen there. He's kind of the Jekyll and Hyde quarterback. Congratulations to them for winning the AFC East for the first time in 25 years.
You don't actually mean that.
I
mean, you mean the in 25 years part.
I mean that part.
Right. Yeah. I started to jump in before the backhanded part of the compliment came, so I jumped the gun a little bit.
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't have a lot of ground to stand on. My Dolphins have only won the AFC East, 3 times in that period or something like that, 4 times, whatever it is. So, but I don't know, Justin. What do you think about the parity that we're seeing in the NFL right now?
So it's interesting because I do think, like you said, I think some of it. I don't know that the NFL is real upset with it, but like you said, it is always kind of good if they have that. A couple of those like blockbuster type teams, and I think back, a decade ago or maybe even a little more, but like when you had like. When you're talking about, all right, the Patriots and the Colts, when it was Brady and Manning going against each other, like that was like a premier thing, like every time, just those types of matchups. And like we said, the Saints Chiefs matchup today, that's a big matchup. It's cross conference, so while it's big, it's not quite as big, and they're pumping noise in and everything, but Breeze coming back, and like Paul said, he was off to a rough start. I think like most incompletions to start a game for him. He was 0 for 5 at one point. He got it going a little bit, but he did not look himself in that game. I find it, I wonder, like this is obviously hindsight, I wonder if the Saints win last week against the Eagles, do they sit Breeze this week? And I know it's tough because if Breeze is able to go, he goes. But like 11 broken ribs, like
that's nothing.
And a punctured lung, or collapsed lung, like that's right. That's crazy. So like, I just wonder if that's why. But like you said, you look at the Packers. The Packers like start out like on fire last night, and then
they just fall off a
like
cliff.
hang on, and it's like, okay, I understand, but the Panthers aren't that good. I think the Panthers are headed in the right direction, kind of like that was a complete rebuild there. So like,
right,
but like, yeah, I thought they would handle the Panthers. What I want to see out of them, because they're the 1 seed in the NFC. What I would want to see out of them is I would want to see them handle the Panthers like the Bills handled the Broncos last night. Like, that's what I feel like the number 1 seed should do.
Right.
And when I look around, like you said, the Chiefs have won a lot of close games, but they do it in a way that's just very different. Like, they just, like, flip that switch. And, man, well, like today, they go down to start the second half. The Saints go down and score. And they just, like, flip the switch and they score a bunch in the second half. And I know they won by 3, but, like, it's one of those where it's just like, all right, they looked a little stagnant there in the middle of the game a little bit. Oh, yep, we need to turn it on now. And they do. And we've seen them do it in the big time. It's not like, oh, is this sustainable for them? Because they did it throughout the playoffs last year.
Right.
On the way to the Super Bowl. So it's incredible to watch. And it's a lot of fun to watch. Man, a couple of the throws, and I know people are getting to the point where they're like, other quarterbacks make these throws too. But the way Mahomes does it, like when he was scrambling full speed to his left today and throws it to the back corner and Mecole Hardman like makes that catch, like he threw it and he just like, it looked like he was just like, I'm going to throw this to try and hit the back pylon. And at the last second, Hardman runs in and just snags it. Like, yes, I know other guys can make that throw in the NFL. Most of them don't though. Most of them don't make it in that situation. And that's why it's kind of fun to watch.
So, Paul, let's stick to the late window here. We had the best matchup of the day, Chiefs-Saints, and it sort of delivered. There was some issues with Drew Brees not being up to snuff after meeting some time. But, it was a close game. It was interesting. The other 2 games, obviously, for our viewership here, Eagles-Cardinals, a big one to discuss. Paul, what did you think about Jalen Hurts' second start for Philadelphia?
And real quick, just another note on the Saints. This is why that loss last week to the Eagles was devastating, because if they win that game, and they were obviously, a big favorite there, they have 11 wins going into today. They still have a chance to get the number 1 seed. And this year with the playoff format, only the number 1 seed is going to get a bye. So it's really an advantage, a significant advantage to get the 1 seed. Losing against the Eagles put them a game behind, and now they lose again today. So they have 10 wins. Green Bay has 11. But the Eagles game was wild. I certainly will not say that it was a very well-played game. I mean, the Cardinals had 3 turnovers. The Eagles had all kinds of special teams gaffes. They had a punt block early that gave Arizona a touchdown. They started that drive at the 6. The Eagles then lost their punter. So Zach Ertz had to hold. He got a really bad snap. It really wasn't the fault of Ertz, but then they had a failed extra point. They got burned on a fake punt that Arizona ran on a 4th and 2 play. So all kinds of special teams mistakes. There were 18 combined penalties in this game, 9 for each team. So it wasn't crisp, but man, was it entertaining. Unfortunately for me, I was going up against Kyler Murray in the fantasy football league semifinals. So I got destroyed. I think the guy who was playing also had Derrick Henry and David Montgomery. Ooh. And then, so, I mean, that's the story of my life. If I have any luck, it's bad luck. But, Kyler Murray just tore apart that Eagles defense, which we expected. I'll give the Eagles credit that they fought to the end. And remember, Arizona can spread you out. They run a lot of empty backfield, and you have Hopkins, you have Fitzgerald. I don't care how old that guy is. He's still a valuable wide receiver, still has really good hands. He's a good blocker. But then the Eagles, without Darius Slay, who is by far their best corner, Avonte Maddox is out, and Rodney McLeod is out. I mean, they had guys in the secondary there that most people probably never heard of, and they were still able to hang around. Now, turnovers is always the biggest stat, and that's how they stayed in the game. Kyler Murray had a couple crucial turnovers, a fumble, and then he threw an interception in the end zone when Arizona was trying to get a little breathing room there. But the Eagles fought, and Jalen Hurts looked really good. That's one thing that has definitely changed since the last time I was on the show with you guys. Carson Wentz to the bench. Hurts goes in, and he threw for almost 350 yards today. He ran for over 60, no interceptions. And the last drive there, I mean, completed some passes on 3rd and long, 4th downs. I thought he played really, really well, considering it's just his second start in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I thought there was a big tick up or a big step forward for him today compared to last week. Now, I know it's a little different going against Arizona's defense than it was the Saints defense. But like Arizona has some playmakers, on their defense, and to see him take a step forward was an encouraging sign in my opinion. But yeah, there were just so many times when I'm watching this Eagles game, I'm like, I just felt like, same old Eagles. Like I sent messages to Joey and another one of our friends earlier, Adam, you know Adam. And like, I'm sending them, I'm like, yep, same things here. Like, I was like, oh man, I wish we were playing a tight end at quarterback this week, like things like that. Cause the way the game was going early, like, and don't get me wrong, like it was a mistake, but like when Jalen Hurts throws the ball away, like, it gets the safety to start because of the intentional grounding. I'm like, yeah, what? Come on, man. Like, but like, that's just frustration. And it's one of those where if he doesn't throw it, he's going to get sacked. So like, I don't really know what I wanted him to do there, but there were just, like you said, penalties, getting burned on special teams. The Zach Ertz one, like clearly it looked like the long snapper thought, oh man, I have to make a perfect snap because we have a different holder. And he made the exact opposite of that. It rolled back to him. But like, just things like that, you're like, of course that's happening. And it's interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see where all of this goes. I mean, I've said it to Joey the last couple of weeks, because I was talking to a buddy of mine back when they were making the switch. I'm like, okay, like as an Eagles fan, let's go through this. What's the worst case scenario so we can prepare ourselves for like what exactly is going to happen? And he's like, the worst case scenario is Jalen Hurts goes in and is awful. Like, because then what do you do? And I'm like, you're right. That is the worst case scenario. So it is good that in my opinion, that Hurts is coming in and playing well and is providing that spark. And they're rolling him out more, which is good because they need to, because they can't really protect in the pocket. But he's getting the ball in the hands of the playmakers, whether it's Sanders, Greg Ward had a good day today. Just they decided to give Fulgham some snaps back today. Like, all of that stuff is positive stuff. Some of that, and especially last week, some of it I'm like, where was this play calling and some of the decisions before? But at the same time, there were definitely more plays today that I'm watching where I'm like, Hurts is making that play and Wentz is not. That's not to say that Wentz isn't making other plays, but it's just one of those where, all right, if they're going to run the read option a bunch, having Hurts back there instead of Wentz is probably the way you need to go. I still get frustrated when I'm watching on Saturdays. Penn State did this only a couple times this week where they run the zone read 3 straight plays. But I'll still feel like Doug goes to it a lot for the Eagles. Sometimes I'd rather them just get it into Miles Sanders' hands a little quicker. But I was impressed with today, and hopefully they keep going in the right direction. But I don't know. It's tough. Don't get me wrong. I'm not rooting for them to lose. But they're at that point where wins don't really help them at this point.
They're a long shot to win the division and make the playoffs.
Right, and I could just see them. So I believe right now they're in the 7th spot in the draft. I could see them winning one of their last 2 and dropping to 10 or 11 or 12, in that range.
What we always talk about.
Right, the worst thing you can be is mediocre. And so watch them win their last 2.
Right, but still miss the playoffs.
Right. So, that's...
Congratulations, you're picking 13th.
Right, and so, I don't know. I feel like... But here's the thing. I have zero confidence that they're going to make the right draft pick anyway. I was mentioning to Joey, I think I saw this last week. I think it's since 2014, the only Eagles draft pick to make the Pro Bowl, from that point, or so the person they've drafted after 2014 or whatever, is Carson Wentz. Their drafts have just been not good. And whether that's not drafting well or developing yeah. Either one is a giant red flag. So that's where my concerns are, is that I don't know. Okay, Hurts looks great right now, but you know what? Wentz looked great for a few years, and we wrecked him. What are we going to do different this time? That's what I want to know.
All right, Paul. We're Justin and I are firing Howie Roseman, and we're hiring you, Paul Roberts, to fix the Eagles. What do you do? What would be your first step? What do you think is the most important thing to do for Philadelphia going forward?
Well, you have to draft better. I mean, we're just talking about that. And nothing against Jalen Reagor. He may turn into a very good wide receiver. I did think it was interesting that Seth Joyner, who, of course, Eagles fans certainly remember from the Buddy Ryan days, he was very critical of Reagor today on social media, and we all know who was on the board that they passed on. I mean, you can't make those type of mistakes. I mean, Justin Jefferson is one of the top receivers in the entire NFL right now. He was one of the best receivers in the country, playing in the best conference for LSU and put up unbelievable numbers, and they passed on him. When you take guys like Arcega-Whiteside and miss on him, Sidney Jones, who everybody said was a steal as a second-round pick because he got injured, he's not even on the team anymore. So, it starts a lot with your personnel department, your player development. If you miss on guys in round 6 or 7, nobody cares. You miss on guys in rounds 1 and 2, it's a big deal, and it sets you back. Now, they're in a real bind here with this Carson Wentz situation because it is a business, bottom line. And the money that he is owed, I just don't think it's feasible. And you're going to hear more tonight and throughout the whole next week because of the way Hurts played today. You're going to hear this, well, just get rid of him, which is
right.
is
easier said than done, right?
Right.
I mean, you just can't do that. If they would let him go, you're talking about like a $60 million hit.
Right.
So I think next year he's definitely going to be on the roster. And then maybe you figure out what you're going to do with him for 2022. But just cut him. It's like this isn't your fantasy team. I mean, there's obligations here. I didn't like the Hurts pick when they did it because you had Wentz, you had just given him all that money. So obviously there was some confidence in him. We remember how he was playing in 2017 before he got hurt. He could have won the MVP award that season. And he still may be a good player. I mean, if he would go somewhere, let's say the Colts, for example, and be reunited with Frank Reich, and I think everybody respects the job that he did in Philly and is now doing with the Colts. I don't think Carson Wentz is completely done. Sometimes fans and media members have a tendency to be prisoners of the moment. And we love to anoint guys after a game or two, and we love to throw guys to the curb after, a game or two. I often think of when Mike Schmidt came up with the Phillies, and the guy wasn't even hitting 200. He turns into the best third baseman of all time. But, I mean, he took a lot of criticism early in his career because – and nowadays it's even worse just because of everything that happens with social media and Twitter, and everybody reacts instantly. But I didn't like the pick of Hurts at the time because they had so many other needs. And you thought, well, he's not going to play right away. And now he's in there. I'm still not ready to say that, he's the next, Mahomes or, whoever you want to say. Has he looked good? Yeah. I mean, I thought this week much better throwing the football. Last week he used his legs a lot. He ran for over 100 yards. I still wonder, too, is that sustainable? Because you're going to take shots when you do things like that. And you still have to be accurate. And today I think it was 24 of 44. So you would like to see the completion percentage a little bit higher there, especially because the Eagles throw so much short stuff.
Right.
Wide receiver screens, just quick hitting play. I mean, and it's not just Doug Peterson, it's the whole NFL. If I see another 3rd and 5 that's thrown at or behind the line of scrimmage.
Oh my gosh, I know.
I mean, it drives you insane. But as far as this team, you have to start drafting better. I think there are nice pieces. This isn't a team that you blow up. We're not talking about the Jets here or a debacle like that, although somehow they managed to win
we're
today.
going to get to that.
But the quarterback situation, and it's not going to be easy the way Hurts has played. But you have to start drafting better. That's priority number one.
Yeah, you got to get that new talent that's under your control and usually for a pretty affordable price, and that's what you have to build around. And the Eagles just haven't done a good job of late. I was looking at their drafts. They got Lane Johnson in 2013, the first round, but the next year they went with the most mind-boggling pick that I could remember, Marcus Smith. That was just a head scratcher, and that blew up immediately. That was you could tell right away that was a terrible.
He wasn't even active for a lot of games his rookie year. Like that.
He's not even in the. I mean, he's not in the league anymore. He hasn't been for a few years. And then Nelson Aguilar.
And I'm a draft geek, guys. Like I read all those mock drafts. Yeah. I had some very good guests on my radio shows in the past. No one had him projected as a first-round pick.
Right.
No one. I mean, he was a second, maybe a third. And you gamble and take him in the round. I mean, that was worse than Mike Mamula. People bring him up.
Yeah.
At least Mamula stuck around in the league for a while.
Right. I feel like Howie and the Eagles, it's almost like they think they're the smartest ones in the room when it comes to the draft, and they trying to outthink everyone. And it's like sometimes the obvious pick is the right pick, and I feel like that's what they did with Jefferson this past year.
Yeah, I just
like if it would have been flipped, if Justin Jefferson had been the kid at TCU, and Rager had been at LSU, like I can understand why you would think like, oh, like he was at the smaller school, but like Justin Jefferson was the best wide receiver on the best team in college football, like in the hardest conference. Like I don't understand what you didn't see there. Like
I would love to see like their draft notes and how they justify passing
because
on him.
Because like it's not like solely speaking to Rager, but it's like because I can understand liking it, but like what made you like Rager more than Jefferson? Like that's what I want to know.
Yeah. So Nelson Aguilar was 2015. Wentz was 16. Derek Barnett 17. No pick in 18. Andre Dillard last year, and then Rager this year. But obviously, it's not just about the first round picks. It's the second and third rounders that are so important. And like Paul mentioned, Jalen Hurts pick this year. I mean, we did the draft show live the first round, and the second round we were texting the whole night, and we're just like, what are they doing? Everyone thought it was crazy when the Packers
they were building a quarterback factory.
Right, yeah, they got the quarterback factory. And now it's like, all right, well, you got to sleep in that bed. You made it, Howie. Like, what are you going to do now? Like, you're the cap wizard. Like, you got to make this work.
Right, figure it out.
I have to agree with you, Paul. Like, I have to believe that, like, unless someone comes and really wants Wentz, which is, you see all these reports that, like, that there's a lot of GMs that would not trade him, which a lot of people use that to infer that there are a lot of GMs that would therefore be open to the idea of getting Wentz if they needed him. Now, what they're willing to give up and what the Eagles could use is a whole different thing. But I did see some stuff that they're like, when the Eagles signed him to the extension, like they already start like budgeting and planning for next year. So like, yes, he has a huge cap hit. The Eagles are planning on that they're planning on that cap hit because they planned on him being on the team. But like, so like, it's not the situation where like, oh, they have to move him this year. Like, like maybe in terms of a locker room and things like that, you need to move him. But like in terms of money, they're like, the Eagles don't have to move. Like if teams are coming in basically thinking like, oh, they have to trade him because they can't afford him. Well, no, they already had him locked up. Like it's not like the Cowboys situation in many ways, but it's not like they have to go out and sign their quarterback to the big deal yet. Like they've already signed him and budgeted for that. So unless they feel compelled to move him, they don't necessarily have to, even though I don't know what the purpose of keeping him around is if you need it. I feel like people were jumping today too when like Wentz doesn't want to be the backup. Well, okay, if he had been asked, "Are you okay being the backup?" and he says yes, like people are going to jump on him right there and be like, "Oh, he doesn't have the type A personality. He doesn't have all,
It's a lose-lose situation.
Right. He can't answer that question in a way that's not going to draw criticism.
Yeah, I thought that was a non-story, to be honest. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Adam Schefter. He's one of the best in the business when it comes to getting stories. But that story that came out today about Wentz not being happy, to get to the level of the NFL or any pro sport, these guys are ultra competitive, way beyond the type of competition that you or I or the average Joe is used to. So obviously he's not going to be happy if he's on the bench. I don't know a single pro athlete who would be happy as the backup, especially when you were a high first round pick like Carson Wentz. So I really, again, Adam Schefter does a fantastic job. He breaks a ton of stories. Today, that story meant zero to me.
Yeah, it got a bunch of likes and retweets though, and that's sometimes I think I'm very cynical and I'm anti ESPN as a entity. I like some of their personalities, on-air personalities, and Schefter's great, but sometimes I think they're like just basically not make something up, but give me a headline that'll get people to click on what you're putting out, and that to me that's exactly what that was today. I'm like, that's not breaking news. That's not information. Of course he's upset. Why wouldn't he be upset? And like Justin said, if he's not upset, that's also a story. Like you're going to, no matter what, it was just, no,
right.
I don't like it at all.
It tells me everything I need to know when when Hurts throws the touchdown today, and like the first person there on the sideline to give him the fist bump was Wentz. So like,
Right.
he doesn't like it, but he's not being a bad teammate about it. And that's where like when you go to like, when you've got people like chiming in like, oh well, he deserved to be benched. Well, maybe he did. Like maybe he did deserve to be benched, but like him not being happy and him not being a teammate, not being a good teammate, those are two separate things. And like, I don't see anything that's saying he's a bad teammate. Even Hurts, now again, what's Hurts going to say? But Hurts is saying, all the right things. Like, yeah, he's, the quarterback room's great. He's helping with anything I need, like all that stuff. Like, I don't know what you want out of the guy. I feel like he's in a no-win situation, and Hurts playing better is not going to help, like the Wentz case, because I'm not sure there's anything he can do to win right now. Like.
Yeah, it's not a Ricky Waters for who for
Oh,
what
gosh.
situation here. I mean, Carson Wentz, I think we'd all agree, is a good person. Does a lot in the community, does a lot for charity. I don't think he would be a bad teammate. Is he frustrated now? I'm sure he is. like
Right.
we said, he's
wouldn't
been a
be?
starter
Right.
his whole career. Now he isn't.
Right, good. And use every ounce of that frustration to fuel your like work as hard as you can. And hey, let's see a true quarterback competition this offseason, or the Eagles move him or whatever. But like, I want him to be successful. I want him to be successful for the Eagles, but I don't know if that's in the cards. But that's for Howie to figure out, right? So
Right, yeah, that's a future Howie problem. That'll come up pretty soon, though.
Yeah.
Let's finish out that late slate.
Oh, my
Paul
gosh.
mentioned it a little bit ago. All right, Paul, who got the worst outcome from today's Jets-Rams game? Is it the Rams who lost to a team that was winless, or is it a team that probably shouldn't have won because now they've taken themselves out of the number one pick spot? I know that the NFL doesn't want anyone throwing games and losing to lose, and obviously the Jets haven't been doing that because, as was mentioned many times on the broadcast, this is what, the 6th or 7th straight game that they scored first?
right,
But this time
they've scored eight straight games on their opening drive, which I was like, that's absurd.
That's
like
crazy.
good teams don't do that.
No. So the Jets win today. They hold on to win today. They went out to a lead. The Rams fought back. I don't know. The Rams kind of maybe woke up. I mean, you can't even blame jet lag. You was in L.A.
Right.
So I just don't understand it. Paul, what do you make of the Rams-Jets today?
This was a shocker. This was the biggest upset in 25 years.
Wow.
Like a quarter of a century. They were a 17-point underdog. I actually used them in a teaser, and as it turns out, they win outright. So I didn't even need the extra points. It was unbelievable to me. It really was. But it also goes to show, we hear a lot about tanking in the NBA. The NFL, I mean, it's a man's league, and it is a physical game. And I talked about how competitive these guys are. If you're not going out there and playing hard, you're going to get your what kicked. I mean, it's not a league for people just to mess around in. In the NBA, maybe you jog back defensively. Maybe, you're not giving 100%. If that happens in the NFL, you could get hurt because, I mean, these guys are looking to put you into the ground. That's just the way the game is played. I hope you guys saw the interview this week with Jason Kelsey. He talked a lot about this and how maybe some Eagles fans want them to lose, but that's just not how these players operate at the NFL level. And it also shows you the fine line in this league. And it's why most of the betting lines that you see are between a field goal and a touchdown, because, so many of these teams are that even. Now, the Jets, I mean, they are certainly not one of the teams that's even in the middle of the pack. But as far as who is it worse for, the Jets. I mean, the chance to get Trevor Lawrence, I mean, that's the type of guy who could turn your franchise around. And now, they get this win, and the tiebreaker is strength of schedule. And everything that I was reading today said Jacksonville is going to get it. So now there are other good quarterbacks that are going to be in this draft. I like Wilson a lot, the kid from BYU. Stayed up to watch a bunch of those games. He can move. He's got a huge arm. I mean, there are going to be other quarterbacks besides Trevor Lawrence drafted, but Lawrence is the best. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So I can understand why Jets fans are annoyed. It is also bad, though, from the Rams' perspective, because they now move a game behind Seattle, trying to win that division. It just goes to show that this is why they play the games, and this is why I think all of us love sports. If you watch a great movie, Godfather, Shawshank Redemption, Goodfellas, whatever, the second time you watch it, you know the ending. If you read a great book, you read Shakespeare or Edgar Allan Poe, the second time you read that, you know the ending. What separates sports and why it's so great is you never really know the ending. We think we know what's going to happen, but we never truly know. How about LSU beating Florida when a sneaker gets thrown 20 yards?
My gosh.
And, Jets, Rams is just another example of why we love sports so much, because you never know.
Yeah, any given Sunday. And, I mean, it's true in all sports, not just football. And, the sports cliche and the quote, you play to win the game, and that's why they play the game. It's all so true. And sometimes we forget that, but then something reminds us of it, and that's exactly what happened between the Jets and Rams today. And I'll take full credit for that, Jets fans. I tried to sabotage you. I played the Rams defense in fantasy today and got diddly squat from them.
I was going to say, as a Dolphins fan, that was like perfect for you, right? Like, you know,
right, to sabotage the Jets. Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
right.
yeah, strictly as a Dolphins fan, and we'll move into talking about my team here shortly. Of course, yeah. If I had to choose between the Jets getting Lawrence or the Jaguars getting Lawrence, I'm picking the Jaguars every single time. I don't want the Jets to have a good quarterback. I want the Jets to have Mark Sanchez again. Like, that's what I want. So let's talk about my Dolphins. They beat New England again in Miami, because that's what they do. It's just this time it wasn't as crazy as it was 2 years ago with the miracle in Miami, or last year in New England where they upset them and helped give Kansas City home field through the playoffs. But Miami got the job done, beating New England 22-12. It wasn't necessarily pretty, and it hasn't been for Miami offensively for much of the season, but they got the job done and kept pace with the pack in the AFC. They're holding on desperately to the last wild card spot, that 7 seed. They're trying to fend off Baltimore, who has the easier schedule over the last 2 weeks. Miami has to go to Las Vegas next week. But Paul, did you get to see any of the New England-Miami game? What do you make of my Dolphins?
It played out honestly like I thought it would. This was one of my favorite plays today, was the under in this game. I actually got it at 42. I know it went well below that, and I've always said let the line lead the way. And sometimes you see these lines, you're like, how can that be so low? See a total at 40 or 41. Like when Army plays Navy, or Army Air Force, you see these totals, it's 37, and they go under. So I was expecting this type of game. I give the Dolphins a ton of credit. I think I said the last time I was on your show, they're moving in the right direction. I think Tua is the quarterback of the future there. They throw a lot of short stuff, but take a look at their skill position guys that they had on that field today.
Yeah.
I mean, with that group, to beat anybody is a good win. And the Patriots, they're just not the Patriots anymore. And it's
Hallelujah.
not just Brady. Talk about a lack of weapons. Who scares you on that New England roster at the skill positions? And Cam Newton, at one time was a great quarterback, got to a Super Bowl. He is not it anymore. So I was really expecting a low-scoring game. I know the sharp money came in big on New England. So they were actually on the – so I saw this come down all the way to a pick 'em before 1 o'clock today. And then it went back up to about 1 or 1.5. But there was a lot of money coming in on New England. But offensively, they're a train wreck. I mean, they're 6-8 for a reason. They're just not very good. I think, they're a public team similar to, the Lakers or the Cowboys or the Yankees. There are certain teams, that nationally people have a perception of. The Patriots aren't it anymore. But considering all the injuries the Dolphins had, and I mean, who had Miami at 9-5, coming into this season, that they could be potentially a double-digit win team.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, I know, I understand. If they make the playoffs, it would be amazing, and I'd be happy about it. But I know that they're not. Could they pull an upset? Maybe. Depends on the matchup. They don't handle running quarterbacks well, and, there's a whole bunch of those in the AFC playoffs. Not necessarily run first guys, but guys that can make plays happen with their legs. We saw that Mahomes do it last week. They played Josh Allen and the Bills earlier. They'll play them in Week 17. Lamar Jackson's just hanging out there, and if Baltimore make it. Oh, and they also sometimes have trouble with power running. Oh, hello, Tennessee. There's a whole bunch of roadblocks, and I don't expect Miami to make the Super Bowl or maybe even make the playoffs, but it's just great to think back to where Miami was, in early October of 2019 to where they are now. And I laugh at it all the time, and I like to laugh at ESPN, and Mike Greenberg last year was so obnoxious and over the top about Miami is just they are a detriment to the NFL. They're a mockery, they're a joke, they're going to get people hurt, they don't care, they're clearly tanking, they don't want to win, blah blah blah, all this stuff. And now look where his Jets are. I just love the karma about everything. But Miami, for them to be where they're at, last year they finished on that hot streak. They look good, upsetting the Patriots and everything. And going into this year, Justin and I did our preview show. It feels like months ago now, 6 months ago when we finally started our NFL preview. And I said I was hopeful Miami could maybe squeak out and get to 500. I was thinking more like 6 or 7, but if they could get to 8-8, I would be a hugely successful year. And here they are with 2 weeks to go. They already are at 9. So, I'm happy with it. Tua hasn't been outstanding. He's not winning games on his own, but he's showing improvements. I mean, he was 20 of 26 today.
Yeah.
Now they're short, like Paul said, they're short passes, and they're not making him throw anything downfield. But that will come. Let him get adjusted. He had no time in the off season to do anything because of the pandemic
and his injury.
And he was injured. So I know there are people like I saw today, Ross Tucker, who Justin and I would love to get on the show sometimes. We're working on that. Get the local flavor on the show. We like that. He pointed out how he's like, I saw more in 2 games from Jalen Hurts than I've seen from Tua all year. I'm like, okay, I get that. But...
It's true, but I feel like the Dolphins have a little bit more that they're playing for right now than the Eagles do. I think the Dolphins are in a really good spot. This is kind of like an add-on, but don't overlook the fact that the Texans, for the second time in 3 weeks, fumble inside the 5 to cost themselves the game against the Colts.
That helps my Dolphins.
Yes, that helps you guys a lot because you're still going to have that high
top 10 pick.
Right, a top 10 pick there. We talked about it before. Some people are like Brian Flores, the Belichick tree hasn't been the greatest, blah, blah, blah.
Just takes one guy.
Man.
I'll take it.
Yeah, it certainly looks like you've got one. He's building in the right direction. I know last week they were talking about, yes, they lost to Kansas City, but, I saw an article today or this week that was just it was over the top, statistic speaking, but it was just talking about how, there's only one team that's really built to just blitz like crazy, and it's the Dolphins. And and a lot of those guys are so young, and it's awesome for the Dolphins.
Chris Greer, the general manager, and Brian Flores have found the right football guys that are there to play for the love of the game, and they want to show that they can compete. I mean, you're getting cast-offs from other teams playing great, like Emmanuel Ogba, who is up to,
what happened in New England for 2 decades.
Exactly. That's what I like to hear. But Paul said, Miami. I know New England had a ton of opt-outs before the season began, and they had a bunch of guys inactive today. No, their leading rusher was out as well. But Miami is doing this without any premier offensive talent.
Well, and Gesicki seems to be like establishing some kind of rhythm there with Tua. Like last week, he had a big week,
but he misses the game.
Right,
today.
but then he got hurt. But it wasn't nearly as severe as what it seemed to be last week.
And then Devontae Parker's out, so like their leading rusher is Salvin Ahmed, who had he's had moments throughout the year, but they've been cycling through these backs. They got rid of Jordan Howard; he couldn't do anything. Right. Myles Gaskin has been on and off injured reserve and the COVID list. Matt Breida, same thing; he can't stay healthy. Their leading receiver was Durham Smythe, the tight end, with Gesicki out. He had 40 yards. Lynn Bowden Jr., Isaiah Ford, Matt Collins. Is that name familiar? Matt Collins?
He probably had more catches today than he had in his whole tenure with the Eagles.
So
Return of the Mac.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see what's going on in Miami, and I mean the rebuild is a year ahead of where I thought it would be, if it would get there at all, because they've been rebuilding for basically 20 years. It's nice to finally hopefully see.
It has to be exciting because, I feel like they're in a good spot.
All right, Paul, we got about 10 minutes left here. I'll let you roll the dice and you let me know what comes up. What game was most interesting to you from the early slate or Thursday, or what do you want to talk about? Which game piques your interest?
One we didn't mention yet was Buccaneers-Falcons, which, Atlanta pulled in Atlanta up 17-0 at halftime, and they end up blowing that lead and losing to the Bucs 31-27. So the Buccaneers now 9-5, the Falcons 4-10. It's amazing how many of these games Atlanta's been in. And, they always say good teams find a way to win, bad teams find a way to lose. The Falcons certainly have done that. Buccaneers, though, I think people expected them to be more impressive. How about the Cowboys putting up 41? That got a little wild at the end there. There was an onside kick that was returned, but
Hail Mary
they beat
touchdown.
the Niners 41-33. So both those teams 5-9, just to get people caught up on the NFC least. You have Washington at 6-8. Played Seattle tough. It was a low-scoring game. They lost 20-15, which is kind of an odd score. Washington, to me, is kind of like Miami in that I think they're headed in the right direction. They have the head coach now in Ron Rivera, who's been in the league for a while, knows what he's doing. He's brought some stability. Unfortunately, they had to go back to Haskins, and he can't play. We talk about missing on draft picks. When you miss at the quarterback spot, you are in bad shape. But that front four that Washington has defensively, that is a nightmare for opponents. And I don't know if they're going to be able to keep all those guys. Well, I know they aren't, just because the money that they're going to demand out there when they hit free agency. But right now, that Washington's one of those teams that you look at their record and you think it might be an easy win, but I guarantee no quarterback wants to see that front four that Washington has. So they're in first place right now in that division, but Seattle, a 10-win team, their defense has been playing better. Getting Jamal Adams back certainly helped, and he was going crazy because he's finally on a playoff team now. But those were some of the other games. Vikings lost to the Bears. Vikings, another team going into the season that had several guys opt out, and they're one of those teams that fantasy football wise, you look at some of the skill players and you think they're going to be really, really good. And, they're not even a 500 team. They're 6-8, which, shows you that you have to look up front with a lot of teams. Eagles are another good example. They've had basically a different O-line combination in every game, and they've struggled to protect the quarterback. Even a mobile quarterback like Hurts. You saw him under pressure. So
right. I think he got sacked like 5 times today or something like that.
yeah, I mean, we all focus on the skill guys, but you have to look at teams in the trenches. I think that's one big reason why the Browns have turned it around. That offensive line, if it's not the best in the league, it's definitely a top 3 offensive line. And they're able to run the ball with Chubb, and they have Hunt back there, and then they can run play action with Baker Mayfield. If Mayfield has to drop back and throw the ball 40, 45 times, Cleveland's in big trouble. And I thought that's what really hurt them last week in that prime time game. They didn't run the ball. That's been their MO. Their style of play is very similar to when the Rams went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. It was pound the ball with Gurley, play action pass. And that's when Goff was effective, because you get the defensive safeties come up, the linebackers come up, they're all expecting run, and then you get easier throws. That's how Cleveland has to play. But it all starts up front with the Browns. And I think that offensive line is a key in why they've turned it around this year.
Speaking of the Browns, they are currently leading the Giants 7-3, approaching halftime. Though they are in field goal range, threatening here right before half. So let's finish off with the teams playing on Monday night. The last time we talked to you, Paul, the Steelers were undefeated, and people were talking about a perfect season, and that came crashing down quickly a couple weeks ago when they fell to the Washington football team. Yeah, excuse me. And then last week kind of got beat up by the Bills in Buffalo. Now, nothing cures a losing streak like the Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Burrow. So I would think Pittsburgh...
We're a tie.
Yeah, we're a tie. But I would think Pittsburgh comes out on top. But what do you make of the Steelers? Are they a true contender? Did you buy into them before the losing streak?
I did, for sure, because of their defense, which was, if not the best, one of the best. But now let's look at the injuries. I mean, they lose Bush at linebacker. They lose Dupree off the edge. Those are type of guys you don't replace. I mean, those aren't run-of-the-mill, plug-and-play type of guys. So that hurts them defensively. And their wide receivers, I mean, they are kings of the drop. I mean, it is unbelievable. I don't know how Big Ben, I wonder at night what type of cold beverages he's having just to keep his sanity, because they drop so many passes. I think they're still a dangerous team. I mean, you have veteran coach, veteran quarterback. They've won it all before. The defense is still good, not as good without those guys, obviously. But they're not on Kansas City's level. And I liked Buffalo. I took Buffalo in that game. I would not want to play the Bills right now. Mobile quarterback, ton of confidence. They had some injuries on defense, and now those guys are coming back. Buffalo's and getting Diggs at wide receiver was a huge addition. I mean, they needed somebody who could threaten the defense. He's done that. They brought in Cole Beasley, who's a really good slot receiver. I would not want to face the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs. So to me, Bills stock up, and I would still say Colts stock up too. Steelers stock is going down. Can any of them beat Kansas City? I don't think so.
All right, last question here. You just mentioned the Colts. Who do you like in the South? Do you like the Colts or do you like the Titans?
I like the Colts because their defense is much better. The Titans beat the Lions today, but the Lions, their season is done. They have 5 wins. Tannehill played great today. Obviously, you have Derrick Henry, and they know what they are. Type of team that's going to try and pound you and control the clock. We saw that last year in the playoffs, but the Colts defense is much better than Tennessee. So of those two teams, I would take Indy, but both are really well-coached teams.
All right, excellent. Well, I'm not going to ask you for Super Bowl predictions, Paul, because we're gonna try, if you're willing, to get you on one more time here before the Super Bowl happens in about 5-6 weeks here. So we'll talk about playoffs hopefully in the future, and but we do thank you very much for joining us here again on the Joe Mays and J-Raff show.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Yeah, great to be on. Thanks for having me. And I won't give my prediction, but just a hunch. Kansas City might be the team coming out of the AFC.
Oh, so you're saying there's a chance for a repeat, huh? Sticking your neck out there, just like Justin and I have. So. All right. Well, Justin and I, we're going to wrap things up here. Mr. Raffoff, anything to add?
No, I just, I think we started the show kind of talking about parity in the league, and for as much as we and everyone bashes the Jets because they are terrible, it just goes to show that even what makes them terrible, that the distance between terrible and okay is not that big of a gap. It really isn't. And on any given Sunday, a team can go out and win. We saw it last week with the Eagles go out and beat the Saints. I know they were without Breeze, but you had a guy making his first start for the Eagles, and just you never know in the NFL and in sports, and Paul mentioned it, that's part of what the draw is. You just never know. And you can't recreate it either. You never know what you're going to get. I know this is a little off, but I talk about when Greg and I were walking into Game 5 of the World Series in 2008, and people were offering you a couple $1,000s for your ticket. I'm like, no, because I can't buy this.
You can't buy that experience.
And I know it's crazy. The ticket is not worth that much, but it's not something I could buy, and so I wasn't gonna sell. It's just, man, sports are awesome.
And after the way it ended, I'm sure you're pretty glad.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I never sold that ticket. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So. It's that time of year. I got a lot of people to recognize and thank.
Oh yeah, it's kind of a big time for you.
It's a big month. Yeah, it's a big month. So I do want to say belated happy birthday to my dad yesterday, celebrating the birthday. I won't give out the age. I won't embarrass him. So I would like to though, because he's probably going to beat me in fantasy and knock me out of the playoffs, which is really disappointing because I was on a roll. I started 1-6 and won my last 7 weeks, and now I think he's going to squeeze one out here. Unless my Bengals, they're going to be my Bengals this week, unless they can shut down Roethlisberger and Deontay Johnson.
Hey, there you go.
So I'm a huge Bengals fan. Don't let my in-laws hear me.
Well, maybe Deontay Johnson will just drop every pass. That's
a
possibility.
Right. That's a possibility. That could happen. So so happy belated to my dad, and congratulations to my cousin Jenny and her husband Mark, the birth of their baby girl.
All right.
Almost hit my birthday.
I was gonna say, man,
almost.
Just piling on to the Mays extended family.
I
I
messaged her and I was just like, hey, I hope everyone's healthy and I hope this works out for you. But if you could hold on a few more hours and hit the 18th, you can join me and Gabby and Ansley. So yeah, happy birthday to all my my cousin's children that fell on the best day of the year, December 18th. And congratulations once again to my cousin. So anything from you, Justin?
Happy birthday to you. You kind of alluded to it, but yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think that's it for us. We will be back next week just before the end of 2020 rolls around to talk about what else. Week 16 of the National Football League
There's Christmas
season.
football this year.
There is Christmas football this year. Yeah, Friday night game. So that'll be interesting. And then I believe they have Saturday games.
I think there are Saturday games this week.
Yeah, so NFL rolling right along, but we are near the end. That's what the holidays mean, is the end of college and pro football, which is disappointing. But hey, I'd love to talk about NBA, NHL, and college football, but we got to end this at some point. So we're gonna get going. Thanks for watching or listening to episode 320 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. Woo-hoo! You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your emails to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as the Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time,